recording. Yeah, so yeah, welcome to the, don't know what month it is, June, general membership meeting of Haight-Ashbury Neighborhood Council. We're going to be talking about today kind of the aftermath of redistricting, and wanted to invite folks that are new to District 5 in the Tenderloin to kind of, say hello, welcome, and also folks that have been cut out, like in the Inner Sunset and other areas as well. Really just to touch base and, really see how, what our strengths still are moving forward, and how in some ways this kind of strengthens having our hand in the Hayden and Inner Sunset in different districts now also. But before we get started, I'll just open it up to any general announcements. And then I know Supervisor Preston is here also, welcome, with some announcements also. But does anyone, before we jump to Supervisor Preston, just have any announcements?
I have a question. I was invited to speak about something, but I'm a new person. So is there any time in your agenda to bring up something that's relevant to the city? And then I would make my announcement then.
Is it an announcement or more like a discussion topic?
Well, it could be both, actually.
Okay. Well, maybe if you have do it as an announcement now, and then maybe we can circle back around. And
okay, I'll try to be quick. It was Nick that invited me to this meeting. I hope you all know Nick. So I told him what I had accomplished in the past couple of years, and he said, you have to come to this meeting and tell them. So I told him that the first light rail cars are now out with forward seats in them, and I was responsible for getting forward seats put back on the light rails because they got injured on the benches when they came in as bench-only cars for the city in 2017 and 18, worked for a year and a half with Muni, and then COVID hit. And so now they're coming out for the first time. And he said, oh, you have to tell people that. And so I'm now secretary with Save Muni, and we have monthly meetings. We're activists for helping transportation in the city. And we have meetings on the third Monday of the month, also Zoom, from 5:30 to 7:30. And I can put my email in the chat if any of you are interested, because we have a lot of really good transportation people in the group, and we have monthly speakers. So I think the speaker this time will be the aftermath of Measure A. And then I also said, I want to say that I'm going to start it on the buses soon, because the buses lost all of their forward seats too. So if people are interested in helping with that, that's another reason you might want to take my email down. And so that's what I pretty much wanted to announce in case it matters to you all about this transportation issue with the seating in the light rail and the buses.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Robin. Yeah, I know that was a really big deal, kind of going to those type of seats, and you're trying to make the cars like
took a lot of work.
Thank you.
Sorry for those of us that aren't, for those of us that are not familiar, what is a forward seat?
Well, right now the light rails have benches. They are sideways, so that when you ride the light rails, you're sitting sideways, including in the front of the buses. The buses also, you understand, you're riding sideways.
Facing forward seats is what you're saying.
Forwards, exactly.
Thank you. I just didn't understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you, Robin. Yeah, if you want to put your info and in the chat.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Folks have other announcements? All right. I'll hand it over to Supervisor Preston for any updates or announcements from your office. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, David. Hey, everyone. And David, how much time do I have? Because I don't want to cut into your agenda. Just I'll try to be quick, but
sure. Maybe, yeah, like maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
Oh, that's plenty. Okay, that's more than I'll need. All right. There obviously like a million updates at any time, and I just want to start by saying that I think it is great that that HANC is so intentionally doing a meeting right after redistricting to invite folks who have been cut out of D5 as well as folks and neighborhoods that have been added to D5. And a number you were able to come. We did a little celebration in the Lower Haight just to thank folks who worked so hard to try to prevent some of this redistricting madness from happening. So, and I know a lot of you weren't able to come, but worked on this. So I wanted to thank everyone for their activism. I think I will say that, like, just very briefly on redistricting, I think it was a really bad political process. It was clearly gerrymandered districts. Very upset to lose, particularly the Inner Sunset, and also have Coal Valley severed from the Haight in that way. It made no sense. And then a bunch of other changes to different neighborhoods that really just showed many things, including just a lack of any care or understanding of some of these neighborhoods by the redistricting task force. I will say, though, that I do think that the activism made a difference. And you see that some of these maps were even more devastating to D5 and would have cut the Haight entirely out of District 5, would have cut the Lower Haight out of District 5, NOPA. So again, I don't want to minimize the impact of losing the Inner Sunset and Coal Valley, but most other neighborhoods of District 5, while we lost some blocks here and there that are important, the core of the neighborhood remained D5. And then the Tenderloin is now part of D5, which, I'll tell you, secretly, I'm like thrilled to be representing the Tenderloin. I hate how it happened. And I hate that the Tenderloin didn't, the wishes of the Tenderloin were not honored in the process. They wanted to stay with SOMA and in D6. So it's nothing to celebrate, but at a personal level, and for my team, we were out there and nonstop in the Tenderloin and meeting with community leaders, and excited with some of the possibilities, David, that you talked about, just in terms of connecting folks, preserving the relationships folks in the Tenderloin have with other neighborhoods like D3 and D6, but also now really more deliberately connecting folks in the Tenderloin, doing community work with the Fillmore and the Haight in particular. So I think and I know some of that's already happening. So that's really exciting. I will run through a handful of updates. I mean, I could talk for a long time on the recall. I think everyone knows where I stand on all these recalls, and especially this one. I mean, I was pretty outspoken against it. And I'm not surprised by the result when you have a 2-year daily drumbeat of misinformation and what can only be characterized as a white lash against criminal justice reform in this country. It is not a surprise that that's going to impact votes, especially in a super low turnout election. So I think Chase's speech was fantastic. I agree with what Lisa said before we got started, and would urge folks to give a listen if you haven't already. I'm also closely watching the Muni bond and disappointed with that. I think that was pretty important that we raised money for the capital needs of Muni. I think, again, not terribly surprised. I think there were some huge miscalculations in the Prop A campaign, including, as I said to Muni or MTA many times over the last year and a half, that instead of fighting with the community to try to downsize and cut lines and get rid of service as you're trying to go to voters and ask them for money, maybe it would be a better idea to actually fully restore your Muni service and then ask voters to go. And so it's not, again, not a surprise. I also cannot for the life of me understand a campaign for Muni funding that front and center features the mayor, who's been completely absent on all things Muni in the city. So it just, that was great for her reelection campaign next year to have her on every commercial and every mailer, but was a campaign disaster. And, I would rather seen like Roger Marenko from the Operators Union, on the front of every mailer rather than London Breed. But, I wasn't running the campaign, but so hopefully it'll eke out the 2/3, but it's not looking good. I mean, it's still under 64%. So that's a blow also. So a few other things I wanted to update you just on legislation we've introduced and The first thing, I introduced 2 charter amendments. We had the deadline for introducing charter amendments, and I introduced 2, and I have discussed these with smaller group of HANC folks in our update meeting, but wanted to mention these to everyone. The first is Sunshine on Housing measure, which would convert the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development into an actual department with an actual commission that oversees it. Happy to talk at length with anyone who would like to about why we need to do that. But I will say in my 20-second version of that is, when you have only succeeded in creating under 50% of your affordable housing goals, and when you are literally holding hostage millions and millions of dollars and refusing to spend them on affordable housing, something is deeply wrong in that department. There's no transparency whatsoever, and it's about time we have a commission over that department. So that's what that charter amendment would do. The other one, and this relates to the recall and really to voting in San Francisco and future races. We elect our mayor, our city attorney, our treasurer, our district attorney, and our sheriff in odd year elections, and they are notoriously low turnout. We have as much as sometimes twice as many voters participate in the even years as we do in the odd years. Folks have talked about changing this for a long, long time. I think the time is now to do it. So I proposed a charter amendment that would basically cancel the 2023 election and move all those races to 2024. And I understand some folks are not thrilled about having an extra year of London Breed or of maybe some of the other folks, but I think sometimes you got to see the forest for the trees here. And if we continue to have low turnout mayoral elections, we will not see any major shifts in power in this city, in my opinion. So I think it's just a good government, good civil rights, voting civil rights measure, while the rest of the country is looking at ways to suppress the vote. I think San Francisco should be finding ways to increase the vote. And you literally have, on these even year presidential races, it's like over 80% turnout. And then you compare that to these odd year races when we elect our mayor, and it's in like the 40s. So Los Angeles did this. They nearly quadrupled their participation. It passed with 77% of the vote. And I think it's about time we do it. So I will need, if these are things that resonate with HANC, it would be great for you to form positions on them, because we will need to convince 6 or 5 of my colleagues plus me to vote to put those on the ballot. 2 other pieces of legislation I just wanted to real quickly touch on because they passed at the board. So we passed the landmarking of Turk and Taylor, which was the site of the Compton cafeteria riots in 1966. Very important site in the history of LGBTQ activism in San Francisco, 3 years before Stonewall in New York City. And that was something that was commenced by Matt Haney before he went to the assembly, like the week before he introduced this. And I worked with the transgender district to take over that file, move it through the board, and now that has passed. So excited about that, especially in Pride Month. And the other one that passed on the same day, and thank you for folks who weighed in on this, we passed an ordinance directing HSH to acquire at least 20 units of Bridge Tay housing in the Haight specifically. Very unusual ordinance that we would target and direct a department to do something like this in a specific neighborhood. But I think we all know the history and how the mayor and some of our less homeless friendly neighbors in the Haight who have blocked a lot of our efforts to serve the needs of unhoused folks in the Haight. And so that passed unanimously at the board. So there's a mandate for that. And they have a year or less than a year. They have to report back in 120 days on their progress, and then have secured the site by March of next year. So that's, I think, a big win for the Haight. And again, thanks for your advocacy on that. And then the other was, so budget, I won't go into this because there isn't the time, but feel free to follow up if you want. But it's budget time. The mayor's given her budget. I mean, I have no words, honestly. It completely defunds food security programs, social housing, zero for like climate action. I mean, it's just, it's kind of a head in the sand budget at best. And somehow found room to do over $50 million increases for the police, but you can't fund action on climate change, social housing, or food security. So if a budget is a statement of your priorities, we know what the mayor's office priorities are. I hope the board can act to restore some of this money, but it was pretty shocking. We are definitely focused a lot on the Prop I money and making sure that we get the funding in to do the recommendations of the Prop I Oversight Board, which are amazing and include everything from creating a plan around municipal housing to investing in repairs at SROs to acquiring land for the construction of social housing. So they have it's a $137 million ask. We'll be announcing soon our plan for getting all those funds. But that is going to be a big fight. And last, well, I shouldn't say last, second to last, community ambassadors. Hopefully you've seen them walking around. We are super proud of our fight to deliver on the over 10-year promise of community ambassadors for D5 with the OSEA ambassadors through the city, and great department program. And we have a new lead in D5. Jesse Jones is a longtime D5 resident, lived near the Haight for years. I don't know if you've met Jesse yet, but hopefully you've seen them around with their bright yellow vests. We have, I believe, 8 of the 10 now for the district that have been promised, and they're training up the additional folks. And this is the last one, but not the least one. And I see his smiling face. Later this month, we will be honoring HANC longtime member and the one and only Tab Buckner. As part of Pride this month, we are all supervisors have picked one person in their district to honor as part of celebration of Pride. And so we will get you the details on when that is before the board. The board chambers, a reminder, are now open again. So you can come in person if you're comfortable with that and celebrate Tab and other amazing advocates and activists from around the city. But I will say this at the risk of making Tab upset, because Tab prefers always to do everything and then some behind the scenes. But there are times in this world when we need to honor the folks who are doing all the work behind the scenes. And this is one of those times. So sorry, Tab, you're going to get all this public attention. We're going to be showering love on you. We're going to be shining the spotlight on you, celebrating you, talking about you at the Board of Supervisors, and hopefully others can join. So I will end on that note. I'm going to stick around for a bit, happy to answer questions or just listen in as you continue on. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Supervisor. That's awesome, Tab. Yeah, do we have maybe just a few minutes if any folks, I know that was a lot, but if they have any questions for the supervisor, anything he shared.
Yeah, I guess I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Rob.
About the mayor's budget, how much do you think you're going to be able to restore of what you mentioned? You said loss for food, loss for housing, loss for climate. How much do you think you're going to get to restore on the board?
Thanks for the question, Robin. Yeah, that's I don't even want to say $60 million question, because hopefully it's more than that. I can give you some context. Typically all the citywide, so what happens is mayor gives her budget, then the board has a period of time and they basically go through and find things that should be trimmed down or cut. And then there's a back and forth about what are called the citywide add backs, right? And everyone's made lots of requests, and it's hundreds of millions of dollars that's been requested, and that will not get met, right? So when you put all those kind of, it's like probably close to $1 billion of things that people have asked for that have not been funded in the budget, and nothing like that. Like it's going to be a difficult road. typically, I mean, it's tens of millions that get restored through the citywide budget. It could be like 30 to 50 million kind of range often. And then there's a question of, in certain cases, there are reserves that the city has, and you can go expand the budget and take from the reserves as part of the process, and that is sometimes done. So what I would say is it's going to be a very difficult road. We're actually working out a path on Prop I that we'll be talking about in upcoming weeks, of how we're going to do it. But I think everyone's bracing for, and trying to maintain that sort of that unity among all the folks who were defunded. But the unfortunate part, right, is it becomes a little bit of a battle around folks having to compromise and not get all that funding, because the mayor's budget sets the parameter. You either have to cut something, right, to fund something. You have to cut something to fund something else, basically. And that's so we're fortunate that Hillary Ronen is the chair of the budget committee, and is a pretty strong ally on a lot of these issues, all the things I mentioned. And we have a good budget committee. I mean, we have budget and appropriations has Hillary, Ronan, Shaman, Walton, Connie Chan, Gordon Marr, and Asha Safai. So the ideologically, there is a majority of support for all these issues, but they have the very real job of trying to figure out where the money comes from. But look, I mean, some of this is just the squeaky wheel. So if you've got a thing, there are folks who are totally shut out. I mean, so many groups, Latino Task Force asks, like, you name it. It's like people are really pissed off, and it just like lots of the API community, generally furious. The API Council and others, like none of these things, were in there. So.
Okay. Also, I see that Kristen Evans is asking you a question.
Yeah, Kristen put in the chat if you would comment on or have any comments on the YIMBY ballot measure that they're gathering signatures for. Yeah, I mean, it's what you'd expect out of a YIMBY ballot measure. It delivers literally nothing for affordable housing. All the streamlining stuff around true affordable housing was already passed in prior ballot measures led by actual affordable housing advocates. So this is, it's a giveaway to developers in an attempt to redefine affordable housing as stuff that's barely below market rate housing. So, it's one of these things where, I think it's bad news. It's the latest, it's real estate industry backed measures that claim to be about affordable housing. We've got a long line of them. There's probably a big graveyard somewhere of all of them. And hopefully this one joins the many others that the industry has put on there to try to trick folks into thinking they're about affordable housing. But like, you're not going to see any more affordable housing if this ballot measure passes. All you'll see is that stuff that is barely affordable to anyone, that is technically below market. It's not an affordable unit. It's technically below market, but it's so minimally below market rate that it's in some neighborhoods, it's actually almost the same as market rate housing. So that's the game. That's what they're doing. It drives up the income of the people who live there, and it drives up the rents that they can collect, because the rents are calculated based on the income levels. So it's just an attempt to use affordable housing narratives to try to secure more profits for developers. So yeah, I wouldn't sign it. I wouldn't sign it, and I hope it doesn't pass. And I also think there could be interaction between some of the other ballot measures that have been proposed by actual progressive supervisors and that one. So Connie Chan's introduced one, and Aaron Peskin has one as well, and then I have the MoCD Commission one. So several other reforms that I think would actually do something. Great. Thank you, Dean. Yes, do not sign it. They're the ones wearing the green shirts. So, yeah, thank you so much, Supervisor, for taking some time out to join us. And I see Jennifer Bolin is here also. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Dean. Thanks, Jenbo.
All right. Yeah, so now we're going to shift over. So we're joined, gratefully, to be joined by Colleen Rebecca, I hope I'm saying your last name right, who works in the Tenderloin with TNDC, and also Lori Lederman, who lives in the Inner Sunset, and Curtis Wu, who is with the Harvey Milk LGBTQ Democratic Club, and also Sarah Wolfish with Coal Valley Hate Allies. And we invited these great folks here, yeah, just to kind of bring us together, some of the old and the new, after post redistricting. And yeah, kind of as Dean had already touched on, and I think a lot of folks here in this room are following the redistricting process and the just kind of complete chaos and pre-baked plan that unfolded during the redistricting process, and with the redistricting task force, and kind of the charade that they put on, and really just creating a map that really watered down progressive districts in an attempt to flip progressive districts. And I'll just kind of quickly put up a map just so we can see what we're kind of talking about and touching on today. But I think, also there were victories in, I think, the organizing and citywide coalitions that came together and just building amongst neighbors and residents ourselves, right? And I think that's where the real power lies in politics in San Francisco, and movements for social justice and change. And thinking about Chase Aboudin also. So, we wanted HANC, we wanted to bring together folks that are like new to District 5, right, in the Tenderloin, and also, folks in the Inner Sunset who are still, our neighbors, but now in District 7, folks from, Coal Valley Hate Allies that are in District 8 now, right, because D5 was split in so many directions, and also folks that have been in District 8, like the Harvey Milk LGBTQ Democratic Club, really just to, really, say that, how can we work together and continue to work together, and that we're really still all in this together, and really, what are folks in your area, what are in your neighborhood, what are you seeing, how has the redistricting process affected you? Have you seen any changes now that you're in or out of the district in a new district, and how are you thinking about it, or how are your neighbors thinking about it, and what are areas also that we have commonalities and similar interests in, like around affordable housing, I think homelessness too, and tenants' rights and tenants' issues. So we just wanted to bring folks together just to kind of have that conversation. And before I pass it over maybe to Colleen first, I'll just put up just a map really quick. I know we've all seen the redistricting maps 1,000 times, and we're probably tired of seeing them, but just so we can just get our bearings of what we're about to talk about. So this is the district lines we were familiar with, that were the former lines that just changed. So District 5, going out to the Inner Sunset with Coal Valley here, and the Tenderloin in District 6. And then I'm going to add in the changed boundaries, and I'll just take these off. So these are the new boundaries where you can see, right, the Tenderloin has been put into District 5, Inner Sunset cut out into District 7, and then Coal Valley and really parts of the Haight put into District 8, and not to mention parts of the north of the Panhandle going into District 2. But we'll just, going to be focusing on some of these areas. So I'm going to stop share. So maybe we'll just go through, just like give 10, 15 minutes to each of our folks who joined us. And maybe we'll start with Colleen, and then go to Lori, and then Curtis and Sarah. And then we can just kind of open it up to a bigger discussion and conversation. So I'll just pass it to you, Colleen.
Sure. Thanks so much. My name's Colleen Rebecca. I'm the Director of Community Organizing, Policy and Planning for Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation. And some of you may know me from my time that I spent with HANC about 10 years ago, as well as I used to work at Homeless Youth Alliance, and my partner currently works at Homeless Youth Alliance, and have had long-standing connection and concern with issues in the Haight. But I've been working for almost 20 years in the Tenderloin, and the last 4 of them have been with Tenderloin Community Development Corporation in the community organizing department. And, you know, one of the things that happened during this redistricting cycle, it was sort of already brought up by Supervisor Preston, was just that it wasn't just the outcome that was harmful or damaging, but it was the process itself that was harmful. And we, you know, with folks in the Tenderloin, we work with Tenderloin residents. I think it's difficult that anybody can say that they speak for the Tenderloin, because the Tenderloin is a really densely populated, extremely diverse, and you know, very rich socially, culturally neighborhood. And at the same time, I think that there are a lot of groups that really try to say that they speak for the Tenderloin. In our work, we try to organize residents, mostly the low income residents, folks who are living in permanent supportive housing, whether or not they're living in TNDC buildings, folks who may be homeless, folks who may have come out of homelessness, and yes, that's true. I was for a brief time. I was president of HANC, and you know, these are folks that really expressing their political power through the electoral process is one of the only ways that they're able to ensure that the basic amenities that they need to thrive and be stable in their life, that they have those. And so I think that kind of the process where when people in the Tenderloin were talking about their relationship with the folks in SOMA and their histories of working together on issues that are related to you know, everything from housing to healthcare to, you know, all sorts of different types of organizing and care and services and support, and really having their voices heard by the city. Organizing is the way that they do that. And to have that sort of break from a traditional organizing ally, the South of Market neighborhood, and to really have their voices be discounted in the process was painful for people to go through. And so I think that right now, one of the things that I'm noticing is, now that it's, you know, been a couple of months since the end of the process, is that we've just been dealing with the fallout of people going through a process where, once again in their lives, their voices were silenced or treated as if they didn't matter, or just sort of people felt like they were being used to, you know, as political props, like in a political chess game, rather than really having their real, you know, concerns about how they define their neighborhood and who they define their neighbors to be listened to. And I think that this happened throughout a lot of different neighborhoods, because there was a different game being played by the redistricting task force than by the community members that were participating in good faith in the process. So moving forward, and from that, I think that, you know, there's a lot of hurt, I think, that came from a process where people who have really been through a lot of trauma, who are ignored, who are discarded, once again feeling that happen to them, and then sort of being combined into a district that not that it was against their will, but it was just not, it wasn't the natural kind of fit with how people had been expressing themselves politically. And one of the, I think the good things that has happened is that our relationship with Supervisor Preston's office from the beginning, I think one of the first things that he did was he met directly with Tenderloin residents from the Tenderloin People's Congress, and really kind of picked up, from a place of like respect for Tenderloin residents, which I think that people, in fact, our office hasn't met with them yet. Like with our residents has, our office as staff hasn't met with, we're going to meet soon, but he prioritized meeting with residents, before, the big wigs or the nonprofits or the, other folks in the neighborhood, which I think was something that for the Tenderloin residents that I work with was the perfect way to start off the relationship. And I think that folks in the Tenderloin right now are working on a Tenderloin neighborhood plan, which is really supposed to be participatory and driven by residents, first and foremost. And there's a lot of, concern about wanting to build on the efforts that have already been there. And to help residents define, the neighborhood and what the future of the neighborhood needs for themselves. And I think that because in our neighborhood in the Tenderloin, we have so many folks who are residents who live in permanent supportive housing, who have come from experiences of houselessness, who are folks who live on fixed incomes, folks who use multiple government services and rely on those for stability. I think that there's always going to be a really important relationship between the neighborhood and city decision makers. And though that relationship is expressed in coalition and in partnership with other members of the community. And so I think that the work that we're doing now in the Tenderloin is really kind of, we're still going to maintain the bonds and the relationships that we have with folks in South of Market and in other areas. And we also have an opportunity to grow and create new relationships and new allies with folks that are our neighbors now that we're in the same district, in the Haight, in the Lower Haight, in the Fillmore, reaching out to folks in those neighborhoods so that we can talk about, what our commonalities, what our challenges, what are things that we can work together on. And I think during redistricting, there was some fair degree of, we don't want to have the Tenderloin, coming from folks in different neighborhoods, right? Like, I think that District 3 folks, kind of Nob Hill folks, were saying like, don't put the Tenderloin in our neighborhood, or don't put the Tenderloin in, it's going to suck all the resources away. It's going to take all the attention away. And I think that what we have with the Haight and with the Fillmore is, instead of that kind of like, we don't want you feeling, I think that we have an opportunity with groups like HANC and with some commonalities with issues related to homelessness and need for affordable housing, to really kind of build and strengthen relationships that I think can ultimately strengthen power for the residents of our neighborhood, which is really the reason why I and my staff do the work. I know that tenants in our neighborhood are really, they're concerned about development, they're concerned about displacement. They're concerned, they've watched sort of the neighborhood change since the Twitter tax break, and seen the neighborhood that may have some surface level improvements, but those improvements aren't for them, they're for other people. And we've also seen, an increase in sort of displacement when higher income people come into the Tenderloin to work or to live, and what that does to folks on the street, or even to the amenities in the neighborhood that could be out of reach for people. So that's a big concern to folks, and people want to see a lot more affordable housing, deeply affordable housing to extremely low income people. That is a huge one for folks that live in the Tenderloin, because for many of them, that's the type of housing they live in, and they want to see more of it. And they're really concerned about issues in their buildings and wanting to see that their buildings are taken care of in a way that is respectful to them as tenants, that, maintenance happens, that services are robust, and that people are taken care of. And I think that there's a bit of concern about, like, once folks move out of the homeless system and into permanent supportive housing, there's sort of like a mission accomplished flag that's waved, right? And it's like, people are indoors now, great. And there's a lot that still needs to, to happen to ensure that people are successful and stable once they're inside. And I think that we could do a lot better job of providing services, support, and just the infrastructure to make sure that that happens, so that once people move inside, it's not inside to a place with a broken elevator and an unreinforced masonry building and, all the other kind of issues that we have. And so those type of issues that are specific to tenants that live in SROs and also in some of the other affordable housing are really important ones that I think are ones that we can have some commonality with other tenant issues as well that may be of importance to HANC. I think maybe I'll leave it there because I don't want to cut off anyone else from the sharing, but I'd be happy to either answer questions or also to kind of talk about some of the attitudes and the hate around criminalization and homelessness. I mean in the Tenderloin, that may be similar to things that are expressed in the hate, but coming from a different source. And that's sort of another place that I think that we've struggled over the past decade or so, where even in the Tenderloin, it's been more difficult to establish services for folks that are homeless because of sort of the fear of, either attracting homeless people or just of homeless people themselves. And I know that's been something that's been ongoing in the hate. And I feel like this is an opportunity to kind of talk about what service needs are rather than focusing the discussion on how to sort of displace people out of neighborhoods so that they're not seen anymore. So I'll leave it there. And oh, Kristen has her hand up.
I was just going to ask if you could comment on the Chesa election recall and if there were any surprises. I don't know if you've looked in the Tenderloin at what precincts voted which way.
I was noticing we've already have established that there is low voter turnout citywide in the Tenderloin, but extremely low voter turnout in the Tenderloin, in the teens in some precincts. I mean, I'm seeing 16% and 18%. So I think that voter turnout in the Tenderloin is typically lower than in the rest of the city. And I do think that there was some buy-in to some of the arguments in the Tenderloin in general, that some of the rest of the wealthier and whiter parts of the city bought into, especially with the, like Supervisor Preston said, the 2-year drumbeat of, blaming all the issues on him. And I do think that in the Tenderloin that there is a growing kind of pro-criminalization conversation going on, even among very low income, poor, and formerly homeless folks. And I think that that's something that we really need to do some community engagement around, because in some situations, I've noticed that solution has been fed to folks by other groups that may have different interests at stake, merchant groups, for example. And it's a real issue of safety, but it's a real issue that needs to have real solutions attached to it. And I feel like there is some frustration, I think, in the Tenderloin with what may be seen as lack of progress. And an easy way to channel that frustration has been to Chesa, since there's been so much attention paid to blaming him for things. But I was pretty shocked to see how low the turnout was in the Tenderloin. Much lower than usual elections. I think we usually see 30–40% turnout. So seeing turnout in the teens was pretty low.
So I have a question. I'm in the Tenderloin. I'm on Gary at Larkin. It's even possible I might be in D5 now. I was looking at that map. I don't know. I looked at the map.
Yeah.
So people are always asking for money. And I've always thought that one of the best ways to stabilize would be to come up with some ideas to get people some money. And I don't know if you've thought about that, because I know you're with the housing group, but one of the good ways to stabilize is also for folks to have some money instead of asking everybody every 10 feet for some. And I just want to put that into the hopper. I wish that there was some way for people that do some small little jobs and start to get paid for them and to help them, you know.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. And I think that issue of whether or not poor people should have money or services instead was kind of at the heart of the Care Not Cash issue back in the day. And it still is a really important one, especially for folks in our neighborhood, many who live on fixed incomes. And even if you have a fixed income, it's well below the poverty level, and people are needing to supplement that.
Totally, it's too low.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Tess, your hand's up.
Sure. So after the mayor's a big emergency in the Tenderloin, how much has been the change there? How much has it improved?
From what my staff and the folks that I work with and talk with in the neighborhood say, what I've heard them say is it's completely the same as it was before. That they don't see a difference in a change. The Tenderloin plan was really orchestrated by the Tenderloin Community Benefits District and other merchant groups, and the Tenderloin Emergency Initiative. They were the ones that were pushing for like an emergency initiative to happen. And then the mayor kind of took that and really ran with it. And I think part of the reason why we may not be seeing a difference on the street is because this was about sort of cleaning up the appearance of homelessness rather than looking at and drug use on the street, rather than looking at what we need to do in order to change the systems that are behind that. And so unless we can really get honest about like what our behavioral health needs, what are our needs around housing and shelter, and having those conversations about expanding resources, which the folks in charge of the emergency initiative were really much more about coordinating off resources, giving them to the Tenderloin at the expense of other neighborhoods, and then doing outreach to specific people to give those resources to them while kind of ignoring folks in other areas. And that's sort of a, in my opinion, that's they kind of just stack the deck to try to make things look okay after a few months, and then it's all going to fall apart once unless we really look at our systems and what's not working about them instead of just shuffling the deck chairs around. The Tenderloin emergency and redistricting coming back to back was a real blow for people in the neighborhood. It was frustrating, angering, divisive. I really feel like our community has been through a lot in this past year, just with a lot of divisiveness, arguing, being centered for political reasons, but not necessarily for reasons that are really around truly helping folks in the neighborhood. So that's been a difficult one. I think people are pretty exhausted.
Any other questions for Colleen? We could do more questions later too. Karen.
Yeah, I just wondered, Colleen, hi. So
hi,
good
Karen.
to see you. Come back to us. We miss you.
I miss you guys. I actually moved to Oakland in the past year. I got
lost you even more.
I got rent-evicted. I did. Yeah.
Oh.
So I miss San Francisco a lot.
I was just wondering what role the Community Congress is playing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Tenderloin People's Congress is a special organization. It was started by Tenderloin residents because what they were seeing in the neighborhood was that a lot of times the nonprofit organizations in the Tenderloin really spoke on behalf of residents, and they really wanted to have their own voice as residents. TNDC, Community Organizing Department, provides technical assistance and staffing support, but we do not push TNDC's political agenda in any way on the Tenderloin People's Congress. It really is an autonomous group that we support with staff time, but we, you know, they make decisions about policy issues and sort of the things that they want to do to improve and change the neighborhood themselves. And so it's, you know, it's a group of, I believe it's a couple hundred. We have about 100 monolingual Chinese speaking Tenderloin residents that are also part of that group, seniors, families. I mean, it's a very diverse group of residents. And the cool thing about it is for a lot of the people, they hadn't really been involved in any sort of organizing or political work until they got involved. And now they know how the budget works. Now they know how legislation works. Now they're both, they're learning and then using that to build their own power to be able to assert like what they want from their neighborhood. So it's a group that I'm sure would be happy to have representatives come and talk to HANC sometime if you ever wanted to, or maybe the other way around, you could come to one of their meetings. They do virtual meetings too. And I think that they're thrilled to be able to be taken seriously and respected as community members, and really kind of had to fight to establish that residents really have an important voice in the neighborhood, just because the neighborhood is so dominated by sometimes by the voices of nonprofit service providers instead of the residents themselves. So that's the story of the Tenderloin People's Congress. And Curtis Bradford is the co-chair along with another Tenderloin resident, Jesse. And it's all resident run with the support of a couple of organizers in our department. So, yeah.
Great, thank you, Colleen.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
All right, we're gonna shift over to the Inner Sunset with Lori Liederman. Thank you so much for joining us, Lori, and I'll just pass it over to you.
Okay, thanks for inviting me. And I want to start by commenting on how really passionately the folks from SOMA and the Tenderloin spoke at so many meetings. And, you know, one of the takeaways I had from that whole redistricting process was how many community members showed up meeting after meeting and acted in complete good faith. You know, they really thought that if they just explained why it was so important to be in a particular district or to stay with a particular neighborhood, that the task force members would listen to them. And it wasn't just the community unity map folks who did that. I mean, there were folks from, you know, outlying neighborhoods in District 7 and who continually spoke to the task force and were really true believers in the democratic process, and you know, and it didn't matter. And I think that was really kind of a terrible wake-up call for a whole lot of people, that the fix was in from the beginning and that nothing anybody said really made any difference in the end, or not much. I mean, I'm not going to say it didn't make any difference, but it didn't make much difference. What Colleen has just been talking about the Tenderloin, and the folks who spoke from that neighborhood were just incredible, and you know, really more compelling than any other group of people. And to be just completely ignored was a really terrible takeaway from that whole process. So the Inner Sunset obviously is a really different neighborhood, and it's not that we don't have some needs, but certainly not the kind of needs that the Tenderloin has from our district supervisor or from the city. But we weren't very happy about being completely removed and put in District 7. So, you know, I really want to start by saying thank you to HANC, particularly to Tess and Calvin and David for inviting me to be sort of part of the planning process for what maybe D5 would look like. I think we all embarked on that with a rational notion that we would be losing some people around our edges, and the Inner Sunset is definitely the western edge of the district, was the western edge of the district. So we anticipated losing some ground. but the process of working with the D5 group, and then particularly with the San Francisco Rising Community Unity Map Coalition, was an incredible privilege. And I'm an old timer. I've been in the Inner Sunset for 32 years. I've been in the city a lot longer than that, and been involved in a lot of different campaigns, came out of organized labor. I cannot remember working in a process that was as well organized, as well led, as inclusive, as committed to sort of the principles of including everybody who was impacted. The leadership and the coordination and the agility of changing tactics midstream, keeping everybody informed, keeping everybody updated, doing mass multiple mobilizations within a couple of weeks, very effectively. It was just an incredibly impressive process. And I think that we should all feel really, really good about that, because I think they really created a model for a whole lot of coalition work in this city. And we really need that, because we do a whole lot of stuff. I feel like we do a whole lot of stuff, sort of the one-offs with the campaigns, the electoral campaigns, and also our little neighborhoods, where it's wonderful organizing in our little neighborhoods, but to really build any kind of power, we have to have this coalition work. So that was a really positive takeaway from the experience. Anyway, in terms of the Inner Sunset, we've had this long time presence in District 5 and would have loved to have stayed, but we knew going into this, given the incredible population gain on the east side, that we were going to lose population and that the Inner Sunset would be a target. The funny thing for us was we just assumed we were going to lose more ground to District 4. And leading up to it, we were just really looking at, well, where should the new line be? And we were focused on Funston, which we thought made some sense. But we had no idea until we saw the map from the Coalition of San Francisco Neighborhoods that there was going to be a real play to put us into District 7. And although we have a really good history of working with allies in District 7 on neighborhood issues, we have absolutely no community of interest with the bulk of District 7. I mean, we are, as soon as you hit Lawton Street and you go south up the hill, it's a completely different world up there. I feel like we just got put into the suburbs. And we are not a suburban neighborhood. We're a very dynamic, active, noisy commercial district with really good public transit, with a lot of bicycle traffic. We're a destination where one of the 9th Avenue is one of the main entrances into the whole museum complex and Golden Gate Park. So we're a really busy place, and we like that. But the folks up the hill are, they're single family homes, they're quiet, they all drive, they all have garages. It's a completely different demographic. And I think the thing that's most disturbing about it really is the fact that this neighborhood, along with so much of D5, is homeowners and renters. And that's what makes this a really kind of wonderful community in a lot of ways. And I'm really worried about our neighbors who are renters, because they're not going to be a significant group in terms of advocacy within District 7. So that's a potential problem along the way that I see. The flip side of that is that, and I think I was thinking about it when Dean was talking earlier, now we have a fairly substantial progressive community within D7 that hopefully can put some accountability on the District 7 supervisor. And that could be a positive thing. And I also think that our longtime relationships with folks in D7 who we worked with on the Kirkham Heights, keeping the 80 rent controlled units there and protecting that area from a massive market rate development. That was in D7 before. Our friends in D7 who have been working on the UCSF expansion issues for a very long time. We have some really strong history of working together with those folks. So I'm looking forward to strengthening that. And it feels like a little bit of a fresh start where maybe we can have a little bit of a role in District 7. But on the other hand, when I travel through that district, I just feel completely alienated. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? I don't know. The task force itself never really talked about our district. They just kind of, from day one, they never changed their position. They just said, well, we're keeping it whole and it's going in D7, and that was it. They really didn't listen to input or from the D5 folks or from the D4 folks, because the District 4 folks really wanted to get some additional progressive voters into District 4. And that would have been the natural thing to do. That's what happened 10 years ago when District 4 pushed a couple of blocks across 19th Avenue, but it didn't happen this time. So I want to do a shout out though to our little cadre of 5 from the Inner Sunset, to Renee and Eleanor and Hugo and Dennis and myself, who showed up over and over again for the meetings and became a little team from the Inner Sunset, even though they didn't listen to us. So thanks to you guys, it made it doable. And thanks to everybody from the Hate and from HANC who really wanted to keep us with you. But we'll be with you anyway. I mean, that's the other thing going forward. You know, we're going to be at Tabs Monday morning before Election Day, visibility at Masonic and Oak, and we'll be at HANC meetings, and we'll be in all the same campaigns. And the only other thing I really want to say is, you know, we got to figure out how to include a lot more people and how to really sort of expand our base and not just keep doing these one-off campaigns where we keep reinventing the wheel as if, you know, as if we can't build off of what we've already done. And I think it's really clear that we have to figure out a more an approach that really builds off of the work that we've all done for so many years, but doesn't really seem to push the ball forward enough, or maybe we just get pushed back. But anyway, we'll still be in all the right places with all of you. So thanks.
Thank you, Lori. Yes, and yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was everyone repping the Inner Sunset during the redistricting process. Just want to open it up if folks have any questions for Lori right now.
Yeah, I do. I agree with you that D7 is very different than the Inner Sunset. So I actually think that residents of Inner Sunset ought to actually make a muscle and do something about that. I mean, if you're going to go to D7 meetings, then show up. And you said it's a very busy commercial district with an entrance to Golden Gate Park. Maybe you need to bring the issues to D7 and say we matter and include us. And I don't know, kind of make more of a muscle about it.
Okay, that's good advice. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Kristen, your hand's up.
I also put it in the chat. I was just asking, how has the supervisor engaged your group, if at all?
Well, not at all. And it's our intention to meet with her, but the situation here is that we have one established neighborhood group in really in the flats of the Inner Sunset Park neighbors. And then we have a group up the hill which claims us, which is the Sunset Heights Association of Responsible People, or SHARP. And those of us who, you know, who showed up at the redistricting task force and who have worked together on UCSF and keeping the Arboretum free and stopping this development in Kirkham Heights and protecting those homes and opposing the Green Benefit District, we're much more of an ad hoc group. We're not really an established, recognized group at City Hall. So there isn't anyone established for her to reach out to, which is why we plan to reach out to her and let her know that, because we're really not frequently, we're very rarely aligned with Inner Sunset Park neighbors. And frankly, they're just a clique. They have not held a general membership meeting gosh, I mean, it's not even just about COVID, probably in 3 years. And they don't do any kind of regular communications. Periodically, with no regularity, they'll send out some newsletter. So, you know, I don't consider them to be a representative organization, but they're established, and that's what the city looks at. And, you know, that was part of the weakness in the outreach in general by the task force, is that they don't have access to anything other than the sort of registered groups. So it is our job to reach out to her, and we are planning to do that. We've done, my husband and I are going to organize a group, hopefully, and we've been, and also Renee, and we've been talking about this. So we're going to do that as soon as possible.
Okay, thanks. Calvin, your hand's raised.
Yeah, I would like to suggest, Lori, that the one thing that we still have in common, and the one thing that Sharp, those responsible folks, and others in existing D7 have no relationship at all, is around Golden Gate Park. And D7 now has, for the first time in history, Golden Gate Park had always been either the Richmond district's supervisor or shared between the Haight and the Richmond supervisors. Never has the Sunset had any kind of organizational say or formal say. Now D7 does. And it seems to me that what the folks in the Inner Sunset know about is the impact of Golden Gate Park and activities in Golden Gate Park. And I think it would be one of the really neat things that we could do as HANC in D5 and D5 is to develop a relationship with you all now in D7 and the friends that we made in D4. D4 now has part of Golden Gate Park.
Right.
So the southern tier of Golden Gate Park is chaired by D5, D7, and D4. And seems to me that that's a good basis to create a multi-district association of folks, because the same is true in D4. Nobody in D4 is organized around Golden Gate Park unless at the extreme end, the Great Highway Battle, right. Which is in D4. But Golden Gate Park proper needs oversight, needs civilian view. And I would like to propose that we think of a way that the new additions to D7 can kind of bring Golden Gate Park and Golden Gate Park issues to the supervisor in D7, to Supervisor Melgar, who has no real history of dealing with Golden Gate Park, although she claims to walk in it daily. So how about that?
Yeah, that's a really good suggestion and a really good point. Yeah, it's a proximity, and it's a big issue. Yeah.
Thanks, Calvin. Any other questions? All right, I think we're gonna shift over. Thank you so much, Lori. And please stick around. We're gonna shift over to Curtis now. Hold on.
Hi everyone. Sorry, my internet's a little bad. Did I hear my name called?
Oh yeah, sorry. I think I don't know. It might be my internet too. I'm not sure. So sorry if my internet's cutting in and out too. But yes, yeah, just want to pass it over to you, Curtis Wu. Thanks for joining us with the Harvey Milk LGBTQ Democratic Club. I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, thanks, David. Hi everyone. Thanks for having me, and great being here, and just love sharing space and listening to everyone talk. Sorry I can't be on camera right now. I'm not feeling a little too well today. But yeah, my name's Curtis Wu, member of the Harvey Milk LGBTQ Democratic Club. Just a little background for me. Previously, I've worked in the affordable housing world and now do communications for a civil rights nonprofit. I also live in Japantown. I just made it. I barely got cut out of the, almost got cut out of the district. You know, you cross the street now and it's a district 2. And it's just funny because I would joke before, like when this redistricting process happened, like put me in district 2 so I can call Stephanie and tell her to defund the police. And when I saw the actual line drawing happen, I was like, oh no, I take it back. I want Dina as my supervisor. So just kind of a funny story, but yeah. I agree with actually a lot what Lori said. You know, for me, one of my takeaways was just, I came into the process with a lot of good faith, thinking my public comment would make a difference and that this process was going to be, you know, an actual democratic process. And, you know, towards the end, especially, it really felt like it had an agenda right from the start. So it's really kind of disheartening. And I think that was one of the takeaways for me. Also thinking like, does public comment, I don't want to say it doesn't make any difference, but I'm really questioning if mobilizing public comment like that traditional playbook makes the impact we think it does. And I think about this generally, even at the board, because it really feels like more and more that these people have their mind made up. So yeah, just kind of disheartening there. But I think in terms of District 8, I don't think it's changed much electorally. You know, I just want to state, I'm not the most familiar myself personally with District 8, even though I know that's where a club mostly has its you know, work. But I was looking at electorally. I think one of the interesting things is that, you know, if you look at the latest election, District 8 actually voted no on H. I was actually kind of surprised by that. And it was interesting that the supervisor came out, I don't know if you saw, but he actually admitted that he voted yes on H. So I thought that was interesting. So I don't know exactly what I just think that maybe speaks a little bit to District 8 being a little complex, you know, maybe on candidates, it's maybe a little more moderate, and on issues, it maybe is more progressive. So who knows? But yeah, I think District 8 just in general is part of the whole District 5 gerrymandering, part of one of the districts that ate up all the other neighborhoods of District 5. You know, as far as I think the queer and trans community, the redistricting, the most notable is obviously splitting the TL and SOMA, and, you know, how that affects, you know, our communities there, and especially with all the, you know, stuff going on in the news nationally, the rights under attack, it just kind of extra hard to see that right now. But, you know, I think as a club, we're definitely piggybacking off the idea of definitely trying to use this as a moment, because it was a time where there were coalitions built, and it was actually very beautiful, the process. So there's definitely an opportunity to keep those, you know, coalitions built and, you know, be stronger. But you know, and I think the map just in general is damage to queer people across the city, because you talk about tenants, low income, unhoused folks. It's just a really, you know, really dangerous map. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all. I don't know what else I can say. A little bit about Japantown. I just thought it was, you know, cut down, continue to get cut down. Its cultural district, not as bad as the other. One thing I was thinking about reflecting is, you know, these task force members asked a lot of these communities to make concessions. You know, oh, you have to make some sacrifice. And again, in good faith, they would actually do it. People would come, okay, you can cut this part out. We'll make okay with this block. But they didn't make any concessions for the richer, higher income neighborhoods, you know? So I thought it was actually really like kind of rude. I was just really upset. Like we actually didn't have to make any of those concessions. So that was one of the takeaways. Trying to think what else. Yeah, I just think in general, redistricting process is just, they didn't do a good job at talking about class or income. It was really a lot about race, which is important, obviously, and, you know, communities of interest, but they didn't do a good job of talking about class. And I think you look at this map in general, it's a lot of higher income zip codes got merged with more lower ones. So I think that'll be really damaging. But yeah, I think that's about all I have to say. If there's any questions, happy to take them.
Yeah, this is Robin. I want to comment on something when you said you didn't know whether public comment was useful. When I was going through my process with the transportation, I found out that my public comment was more useful when I reported what I had done. I did 2 surveys of the public. The first was 400 people and the second was with 100. And when I reported that to them, it gave them more of a I don't know, an idea of what was going out there for the public than just me reporting. So I just wanted to put that into the hopper that when my numbers expanded to 400 and 100, they listened to me more. So I don't know how that would work, you know, when you're trying to deal with this situation with rich people who don't really want to listen, but I don't know, I just want to report that, so.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think that, you know, in general, even the clerks or City Hall can make it a lot better to encourage people to make public comment that isn't just that, you know, maybe they could say, hey, we got this many letters of support, this many against at the beginning of an item, something like that. I saw a friend suggest that. So yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of creative ways we can still encourage public comment.
Yeah, amp up the number.
Yeah. Tab, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm not actually surprised that District 8 voted no on H, because as you mentioned on the initiatives, they tend to vote more progressively. Right. And Chesa actually did win District 8 in 2019. I just wanted to clarify, you're saying that Raphael Mandelman admitted to voting yes on H?
Yeah, heard that. Yes, it came out in a column. I'm 90% sure. Now I'm not, I want to make sure because, you know, internet can read it fast, but I'm 99% sure I saw something in the column where he said that he voted yes on H. Now, you know, to his credit, you could say like he didn't say it before, so he wasn't like campaigning for it, you know, said it after. That's maybe one thing you could say positive, but yeah, he did vote yes on H, I believe.
Thank you for that info. I was still gonna get on this case anyway for not taking position, but this is really important to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tab. Any other questions for Curtis? Maybe just one more. Just in your work with the Melt Club, like how has your I guess relationship been with the Supervisor Mandelman, and I guess also just with residents in District 8, and have you all just heard kind of any, like folks even aware that, you know, district lines have changed, or yeah, I guess just those couple questions.
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of like the gauge of the residents, I can't really speak to that. I know there are probably other members of the club who might have a better pulse, or maybe even people here, but I think in terms of our relation with Supervisor Mandelman, I mean, we try to keep you know, every board's different, but I think our board right now is generally try to keep obviously a relationship with all the supervisors, no matter what. You know, we definitely try to pressure, but we still work, you know, try to encourage whatever we can, difference we can make. So I don't think we haven't met with Supervisor Mandelman yet after this whole thing, but I think our club is still doing a lot of decompressing from the election because a lot of us threw down. But yeah, I think that news about the H definitely didn't make a lot of our board members happy. So I think we will be meeting with him soon, though. I know that is on the table, on the docket.
Thanks, Curtis. Yeah, thanks for joining us, even though you're not feeling well. Oh, say, Karen, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just had kind of a general question, and it may be a rather foolish one, but even though this isn't going to happen for another 10 years, I wonder, have people thought about or started thinking about how to keep this from happening again? Or is it possible?
That's a great question. I don't know if I have the answer to, but I'm not sure. I do know, all I say is like, I know when people have said like, oh, I was around 10 years ago for this, I'm going to be one of those people now. I'll be like, hey, 10 years ago, I know exactly what happened. So, but I don't have that answer.
Does anybody have thoughts on that?
Well, I have a question. Who was the task force?
Yeah, those are both good questions. So the task force, the redistricting task force was made up of members appointed by the mayor, the board of supervisors, and the elections commission. Yeah, and you can, there's a lot of, if you just kind of Google San Francisco redistricting task force, and Mission Local did a lot of coverage of it. You can kind of see who some of those players were, but also to get to, and just maybe quickly to answer Karen's question, there was the coalition that came together around the community unity map went to the Board of Supervisors, asking the Board of Supervisors to both put the community unity map on the ballot to let kind of the people of the city decide between this kind of gerrymandered map or the community unity map that had an actual public process. And they also, we also went and asked them to reform the redistricting process to make changes to just do just that and ensure this doesn't happen again, including changing how the board is made up and put just more checks and balances on how the task force is made up and to put more checks and balances on the task force. Also, unfortunately, the board never took that up and never took action on it. Hopefully, at a minimum in the future, the board will reform the process. But yes, that's a great question. Lori, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I don't actually know what happened in early days, but I mean, I do know that we ended up with 3 very supportive task force members who were appointed by the Board of Supervisors. And my question, and what I really think one of the things that needs to happen next time is we have to make sure that we have really good candidates to submit to the Elections Commission. I mean, we did end up having one of them vote with us at the end with some flip-flopping in the middle, but obviously we did not do well with 2 out of 3 of the Election Commission appointees, and maybe that's an area we could focus on more intensively next time.
Thanks, Lori. Bruce, your hands up.
Yeah, I also think there were so many Brown Act violations, meeting after meeting after meeting, that there has to be some monitor. You know, I'm really surprised that the sitting deputy city attorney didn't jump in, but they may have been instructed not to. So I'd like to see a monitor, you know, unbiased, you know, impartial monitor and it could be somebody from the Sunshine Task Force or it could be from the Ethics Commission, though that's not what they normally do, but that kind of thing.
So Bruce, how would that have helped the process if that had happened more properly?
One is it would control how they're making decisions. For instance, when they were doing on the fly gerrymandering or adjustments of the boundaries, they would call for consensus and no public comment. You call for consensus, that is a proposal for a vote. What if somebody objected to the consensus? And now you have debate. You know, the public has a right to, under the law, to comment on all items that are on the agenda. And if they're being created on the fly, same difference.
So that was a violation then?
Absolutely.
I wonder if they could be called on that.
Absolutely, they can, but the public doesn't have the ability. There's no process for the public to do it except for after the meeting is over. And there is state law that allows any person to submit a cease and desist letter on any actions taken.
I'm just wondering though, if they violated something, is there any legal action possibly here in terms of making these decisions on gerrymandering this and that and this, and you know, how it kind of went crazy all over the place with the boundaries.
It's only process, not on the subject matter.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah.
Tess.
Yeah. For those who are not tired of redistricting, I know a couple of things. One, that the member of the Elections Commission who had worked on the state redistricting drafted a 3-page memo with some thoughts about what happened, what were some best practices, and what might be done differently, which would possibly include making some changes to the charter about it. But I would say there's a lot of opportunity there, because one of the changes that she had mentioned was you start with a blank map. And so I wonder if people would feel comfortable with starting with a blank map and just drawing new districts completely with, of course, considering communities of interest. I myself feel like I have an investment in my district as well as my neighborhood. So I mentioned those two things that we may want to try to approach the Election Commission and give them some input. Thanks.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Tess. And then Lisa.
To kind of dovetail what everyone has been saying, I think the elephant in the room about the whole process, this most recent round, was that there was no framework in place at all for order. And it really is regrettable that there's so little that any of us can do now that the hash has been made, that it's just, we have to live with this horrific map for 10 years. I think, and also that I read that report, the 3-pager from the Department of Elections fellow, and it was really, my takeaway from that was that he was talking about it from the task force's point of view. There's no weigh-in from the public about all the glaring violations of the Brown Act, or just the lack of transparency. They should have started every meeting with a tally of communications from the public. There should have been some kind of reckoning, accounting for that, so you could kind of see where we are, the public weigh-in, and that's why people have such a bad taste in their mouth, because it really, really seemed like they told us to weigh in, and we did. And we made concessions and we acted in good faith. And it was like we were under glass. We were unheard. So I recommend we have tallying measures in place. I mean, that would be one small thing, but they never spoke of that. You could look it up individually online, after the fact, but that was problematic, I thought.
Yeah, agree.
I just want to say, I
Definitely.
think that we're hearing so many ideas come out now. I think this needs to be a project, and it could be citywide. What we're hearing right now, citywide, people saying this, and this should have happened, and start making a document collecting all this. I mean, you'll go for the next in 10 years, I guess, from now, but at least start the process.
Yeah. Like I said, the idea we had kind of gone to the board with a starting point and process, and that I definitely think it's something that supervisors need to keep hearing in their ear, even as these boundaries got certified. We got a couple more folks. I definitely want to make sure we get to Sarah also, but maybe Tab and Colleen, we can quickly go to you.
Okay, just really briefly, I think Lisa had a point, and it's interesting on the issue of combining the Tenderloin with the Fillmore. We kept on hearing about these emails that they've been getting. We had lots and lots of people show up and call in to keep the Tenderloin and the Soma together. But we heard about these emails that poured in, but as Lisa said, without telling evidence, that's just hearsay. So better documentation of actual public feedback would be helpful.
Agree. Colleen.
I was just going to mention that, one of the things that was so damaging about this was just the way that it damaged sort of people's trust in public process in general. Like, I mean, with the folks in the Tenderloin, I was hearing people saying like, nothing, it doesn't even matter if I say anything or participate in anything, like people already have their minds made up. There's no point in it. There's no point in voting. There's no point in like it, you know, it was really kind of damaging. And I feel like part of what happened was that the task force members were so blatant with their, just not even really trying to hide. I think that there's a lot of kind of deals and stuff that gets made behind the scenes, and politicians, you know, and decision makers are fairly good at hiding it. In this case, it was just so blatant and in our faces, like taking phone calls in the middle of the meeting. I'll vote in a minute. I got to take this call, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And so it just really felt like they had some sort of a mandate from somewhere that they could do whatever they wanted, and that they were answering to somebody else, you know. So that, I think we're still trying to pick up the pieces from that, just people feeling like public participation doesn't matter as a result of trying to participate and just not being taken seriously. But.
Yeah, no, agree. And I think, yeah, if anything, it just makes me just feel like we need to double down on organizing ourselves even more. But yeah, I appreciate all that. I know there is a, we could go on for hours and hours, I feel like, with how blatantly terrible that whole process was. But last but not least, definitely, we also have Sarah Wolfish with us with Coal Valley Hate Allies, who does amazing work with CVHA. So I want to pass it to you. Thanks for joining us, Sarah.
Thanks for inviting me. I will try to be very brief because I know it's late for a lot of us right now. But Coal Valley Hate Allies, I mean, our name, Coal Valley and the Hate, got split in half. And that's very frustrating. And we're kind of still dealing with the ramifications of it as a group. Our group is devoted to helping our unhoused and our unhoused neighbors and our neighbors that are vulnerable to displacement. We kind of have three different things we focus on: harm reduction, mutual aid, and systemic change. And I think the mutual aid piece and the harm reduction piece are the parts where we're struggling with, because we're being divided in half, and we're just like, if we want to align ourselves more with, like, I got moved into District 8 personally. So Mandelman's my new supervisor. And so the question is like we're being divided, which is weakening us, like our attention, our resources, and like how we can strategically help all of our neighbors. So I think we're kind of still dealing with how we want to, like, do we want to focus our attention toward just doing our mutual aid and our harm reduction in our actual neighborhood and not worry so much about the politics? Or do we want to kind of lessen our mutual aid work and really try to strategically still work with both supervisors? I will say we reached out to Mandelman ourselves. He did not reach out to us. And at first, I think his office was like, oh, great. And I think then they Googled us and realized we're not the most aligned with him. And it's been radio silence. So I don't think we're going to be working with Mandelman much. We are not like the Mo Club. We are not as graceful as they are. We do not care to work with supervisors like him. But we want him to hear from us because, you know, we are his constituents now. And yeah, we're kind of dealing with it's a major ramification for us. We're very frustrated with Mandelman's stances on homelessness and the approach to homelessness and housing. We're very worried about what he's going to do with regards to 730 Stanyan and affordable housing. And I think the thing that I'm personally most worried about is if tents pop up in Coal Valley again, they now have a supervisor with a direct line to SFPD. And I'm very worried of what that's going to mean for our unhoused neighbors, because in the past, when the shelter shut down during the pandemic and there was tents everywhere, people were emailing Dean Preston like every day, and Preston's office tried to educate them and did not send SFPD to go harass these people. And Mandelman has proven to be someone that will go send DPW and SFPD to go harass people in tents on the street. So that's kind of something we're concerned about. There's just not many tents anymore in our neighborhood. So it hasn't come up yet, but it's something that we're very aware of, and we're trying to kind of prepare ourselves, because we do have a street cop, like a cop watch group, where we go out there and, document when the police are harassing our unhoused neighbors. So we're prepping for that moment, but I think so far it's more just the mindset of, we kind of need to figure out what we want to do as a group moving forward and where we want to direct our energy, because we are being split in too many ways for us. And then also just kind of prepare ourselves with, like, how can we best support our unhoused neighbors specifically with this change. I guess the last piece is we are kind of thinking of strategically maybe trying to work more with other D8, like District 8 neighborhood groups, to see if, like, we can work on projects together, because it would be great to push, like, the Castro and Noe and just other areas to be a little bit more compassionate about how we approach homelessness, and a little less reliant on the police when it comes to approaching homelessness. So I guess where we are right now is to be decided, but that's kind of the things we're all struggling with right now. Any questions?
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, any questions?
Go
for it, Lisa.
I guess I would ask everyone attending this meeting if they have any ideas. Sarah, what you just said is really alarming to me. What you said about if the tents pop up again, now that Mandelman is the guy, the haters are going to start. The safe, healthy hate people who are really the Coal Valley people who are in D8 now, they'll get on the bat phone to Mandelman. And I mean, what are some ideas? Like, do we have any ideas? Or maybe we need to think on that.
I will say that our Cop Watch group, which it's like a signal thread, that if anyone sees any cops talking to a homeless person, we get alerted and we send someone out, and we have our phones out, and it prevents a lot. I think it is one of the most effective strategies to preventing a sweep and to preventing the stolen goods and preventing, severe harassment.
Good to know.
Yeah. We could always use more people. So
that's truly alarming. Yeah. I mean, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like, well, I mean, and God help you guys. You have two well, I'm confused. Anyway, thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Lisa. Bruce?
Yeah. Hi, Sarah. How are you? So I would just say, don't worry about the district lines when it comes to providing your services. Just continue as usual. I mean, we all appreciate it. So, I wouldn't worry about the politics and all that. And I think if we're concerned about homeless folks being harassed in now District 8, send them over to District 5. We'll take them.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, like what came to mind for me while you were talking was just like, I think to me just shows an example of like a positive coming out of this, of your group being proactive and like, okay, are there other groups in D8 now that we can influence, right? And you're still in the hate, and what you all are talking about, you're trying to figure out kind of that balance too. But so you're still connected to groups in the hate, right? And then that connects us, and so that kind of bridges that area. And then like thinking back to the Inner Sunset, and Calvin mentioning the park, and that bridges like 3 different districts, multiple neighborhoods. So yeah, I think in the Tenderloin, of course, too. So I just, yeah, it feels like these are the types of relationships and potential coalitions based on certain issues that could be, you know, mobilized or built, which just seems like a strength. But I definitely hear that you all are trying to wrap your heads around it at the same time too.
Yeah, I think something during our last member meeting, something that came up that I thought gave me a lot of hope was when we first started CVHA, like a few months in, a whole bunch of different neighborhoods did reach out to us and were like, we want what you have. We're like, great, you can do it. What? And they kind of like, they like presented it as like a branch of us, even though they just were their own group. And I kind of forgot about that, and a member reminded us, and we reached out to them, and yeah, there is a group in the Castro that actually formed like based off our model. So there's hope. It's just, yeah, we're just trying to kind of it's been a lot these last few weeks in politics here that has been heartbreaking. So I think we're all just trying to figure out what are our priorities and what's the order and what's the game plan.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, well, any kind of final or closing thoughts? I know Bruce has an announcement that I want to get to before we close, but just kind of any just final thoughts or comments or questions, or even from any of our other esteemed panelists who spoke earlier after hearing from some of the other neighborhoods. Well, yeah, well, I want to thank all of you for, joining us. And yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, just for me personally, during the redistricting process, I wasn't involved. I don't even know what I was doing 10 years ago, but I definitely wasn't involved. But just I've learned so much about just neighborhoods, honestly. And I think kind of the way I even just walking around and thinking about it, and, how do I tell if I'm in this neighborhood or that neighborhood? And I think just from like an organizing perspective, and kind of building like political power of working people and tenants, I think it's been a very like educational process, and I think it's in good ways and in bad ways too, in terms of what's wrong. But I think that's something that I saw a lot of other people take from it also. So yeah, I'm just encouraged by kind of the group we brought together today, and just hearing from you all. So thank you for coming.
I just want to say, I think you've run the meeting really well. Congratulations to all the people that spoke. And I would also just like to put in a plug again. I think you need to start the project of getting this input from all over the city about what's wrong and how to change it for next time. I think it's an excellent suggestion.
Great, thank you, Robin. Yeah, thanks for joining us. All right, I want to pass it over to you, Bruce. I know you have an update on state.
Yeah, just real quick. This has to do with how we are able to provide at least most or some of our advocacy when we go to public meetings. There are 3 bills, AB 1944, 2449, and 1733. The first 2 are seeking to make permanent remote meetings in the Brown Act. And the third one is for the Begley-Keene Act. Begley-Keene Act is for state agencies. Brown Act is for local agencies, so that would be us. It would, one of them, well, 2 of them that will be, try to make it permanent, will allow meetings to be held in a private location that would be inaccessible to the public. And so that means if like 3 folks were to meet in somebody's house that is outside of the city and technology breaks down, if they still have a quorum, then they can continue doing their work. That's kind of how it's reading right now. So waiting to see if there are any new amendments as it runs through the Senate side of the legislature. But it's pretty onerous. It will change the way we would engage with government, and currently right now under AB 361, every meeting body has to pass by resolution every 30 days a resolution stating that they will hold hybrid meetings. If they don't pass it, then they must hold an in-person meeting, and they won't be able to provide online. So it's kind of a little back-asswards in a way, but that's the way it got introduced. So so keep your eye on it. I'll keep posting in the voice updates, and if there's something immediate, we'll get it out over the listserv. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Great, thanks, Bruce. Maybe you could just put the bill in the chat, AB something. I already forgot, but yeah, thank you, Bruce.
All right, this is Nick. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it, Nick.
Maybe you already covered this, but to Bruce, how does this affect the functionings of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, if it does at all?
It doesn't. It only affects the way the task force would operate itself, but the task force is always going to try to be the penultimate and provide as much access as possible. Can't say that for maybe the other agencies or departments, commissions and boards around the city, but won't change the Sunshine Task Force. It will change possibly the way it makes determinations because the laws change.
Well, how will it affect the way the determinations are reached then? Can you tell me that?
The task force has to follow the law. Whatever the law is, that's how the determinations are going to go.
Well, could you be more specific? Give an example.
If a meeting body were to have a majority in somebody's private home, and the technology goes dead, and they continue to have the meeting if AB 1944 passes, then they can continue to have a meeting, take action, and it'll be valid.
So like apply it to the task force. I mean, like that would be a perfect example, like.
Well, the task force, it doesn't matter what the meeting body is.
Right.
The task force, the planning commission, the board of supervisors, the PUC commission, I mean, port authority, it doesn't matter. It'll be across the entire state. So that's why I pay attention to that. And right now it's being assigned to a committee on the Senate side. So I have and there's not been no amendments to it that are significant yet.
That's really bad because they could hide anything they're doing.
That's right. And I think what's important, if you have opportunity to read the opening preamble of our Sunshine Ordinance, it's pretty strong language about public officials, try to do business in secret, and they find, new ways as technology, changes. And so that's why it's really important to have strong sunshine laws.
So who's watching that, the bill, with you?
The First Amendment Coalition, the ACLU, California Action, which is probably their PAC, a handful of news publishers, around the state. News publishers rely on, these sunshine and open government laws. They were very involved in getting them created. And there's a host of other organizations that are getting wind of it. It's just, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of bills that run through the legislature. I don't even think most legislators know about this.
Who's the lead sponsor? Does it have a list of sponsors?
Yeah, if you go to the legislature's website to search for the bills, you'll see it. They list all the sponsors and the authors.
Well, usually there's organizing then to get people to communicate with these sponsors. I mean, the public to get involved when there's something like that with a bill that's affecting the public.
That's absolutely right.
So who's leading the charge in that whole list?
Well, like I said, all of them, they're a coalition. So they're all paying attention to it.
What's the name of the coalition again?
It's not a name, there's no name, it's just a bunch of folks together.
Okay.
But the First Amendment Coalition is a nonprofit law firm, and their primary work is open government.
Are any San Francisco legislators sponsoring on the sponsor list?
Not at this time.
Oh boy, that's not a good sign.
Maybe they should.
No, well, the question is AB 1944 is the most egregious. AB 2449 is not that bad. All that does is it allows people with requiring reasonable accommodation under ADA to be able to continue to participate on their boards or commissions remotely. So that's not too bad, that one. But 1944 is the one that's most egregious, and 1733 for the state agencies is more or less the same thing. That's pretty egregious.
Why is it egregious?
I repeat it again, because it may allow meeting bodies to meet in private.
Okay.
That seems pretty central to everyone, to me. I mean, no matter who you are, even as legislators. I mean, that's a very broad issue for everyone. I mean, not even a subgroup.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sunset on this for 2030, but and there's some other. This will go into effect in 2024 if approved now, but that means that whatever's happening now, AB's 361, which sunsets in 2024, is kind of the law of the land now.
This is so anti-democracy. I mean, this is so absurd.
That's why I'm trying to inform you about it.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it to us, Bruce. Definitely thanks for keeping an eye on it, and definitely keep us updated.
Yeah, I've let Preston Kilgore, who represents Dean on the state legislation committee, he knows about it. So, I haven't spoken to him in a week or so, so I don't know if, what the status is there, but I'll check in with him.
Great, thank you.
I also just want to say, Robin, thank you for coming. Just the insights that you offer and the questions, the dagger questions that you ask, like, it's refreshing. I have to say.
Thank you very much. So I just want to thank Nick for inviting me. We had a conversation today and he said, you should come to the HANC meeting tonight. And I got to say that all of you are great and the topics were really great. I was very engrossing tonight. I mean, I was really interested in what everybody was talking about. So thank you all. Oh, here's Nick. Thank you, Nick.
Hey, Robin, thank you very much for saving the streetcars.
Yeah, you're responsible for me being here at this meeting tonight. Yeah, because, you know, when you do something like that, it gives you some insight. So that's what I was saying when I talked about the person who was asking whether public comment mattered. I said it mattered when I reported what 400 people told me and what 100 people told me. So I'm saying when you do some campaigns, you see what works. And I got a change in Muni, which is pretty amazing. So, and this is how it was done. It expanded beyond just me. And so anyway, it just helps to do a campaign. And then we're going to do the buses next. And so I am into what's effective, you know, and I want to encourage anybody to think like that. Like, you know, when I was thinking tonight, what would be effective is you start collecting these ideas of what went wrong and how you're going to change it. The person who said, what are we going to do in 10 years from now? I'd say start now.
Agreed. And Robin, I just have to say,